It says that, but it's not really, Gary.
We know who you are.
Unfortunately, yes.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's 2 o'clock. I'm going to call the October 4th Planning and Zoning Commission to order. Can I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Briley?
Here.
Commissioner Baugh? Here. Commissioner Byers?
Here.
Commissioner McElina?
Here.
Commissioner Richardson?
Here.
Commissioner Rigsby?
Here.
Commissioner Williams?
Here.
For the record, Rigsby and Williams are attending via Zoom. Also present is Samantha, Community Development Director, Stephanie, Zach Cook for the Village of Ruidoso. You do have a quorum.
We have 100% attendance, which is excellent. Certificate of compliance, please.
I do certify that the meeting was posted in accordance with Resolution 2022-01, and all properties were posted in accordance with resolution, or with Section 5440 of the Municipal Code.
Thanks, Stephanie. Has everybody got a chance to look at the agenda? Can I get approval to approve the agenda? Motion, please.
Motion to approve the agenda? Second.
We have a motion and a second. I'm just going to roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Baugh?
Yes.
Commissioner Briley?
Yes.
Commissioner Byers?
Aye.
Commissioner McElina?
Aye.
Commissioner Richardson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rigsby?
Aye.
Commissioner Williams?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Has everybody got a chance to look at the minutes for our last meeting, September 6th? Is there any corrections? Any misspellings? Can I hear a motion, please?
Karen Briley, I move that we accept the the minutes as presented from September 6th of 2022.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Baugh?
Aye.
Commissioner Briley?
Aye.
Commissioner Byers?
Aye.
Commissioner McElina?
Aye.
Commissioner Richardson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rigsby?
I abstained because I wasn't at the meeting.
Commissioner Williams?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. So this part of the meeting is for any public input. We have this time for you to address the commissioners for any item that is not on the agenda. Again, we have quite a few people that are here and on Zoom. So is there anybody here that wishes to speak on something that's not on the agenda? Seeing none face-to-face, I don't see anything on Zoom or YouTube. Seeing none, we'll continue on. All right, our first public hearing is continuance of a conditional use approval request, case 2022-345. The Planning and Zoning Commission had a lot of questions for the applicant, and they were not here last meeting, and so that's why we continued this to this meeting. Sam, you want to give us an update and introduce us to the applicant?
Yes. Do we have Cody Bateman here with us? Oh, okay, he's on Zoom.
Yes, we do. I'm on Zoom.
All right, thank you. He had requested approval to assemble, test, and process goods of products, specifically modifications to shipping containers. and that is within the C2 Community Commercial District located at 127 Vision on lots 27 and 28 of Block 4 in the Wingfield addition. Did you want to give them an opportunity?
So I saw you both raise your hand. Are you part of this? Can I have all three of you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, please? Yeah.
Yes.
Do you swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Bateman, can you give us a kind of a rundown of what this application is for? I think the commissioners had a lot of question about, the products that you're rehabbing and how much in and out and all this kind of stuff, but you were not here to address those, so sorry we had to put you off another month. Go
No,
ahead.
I'm sorry for that. We had a mix up on time zones and everything else. So I do have one of my employees there. He does have a handout. He'll be glad to hand out. It gives you a little bit more visual representation.
Thank you.
Of what it is we'll be doing.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if the attorney needs one or if, okay. All right, we all have the printout. Are you going to go page by page or just give us this
No,
rundown?
I don't know if I really need to. I'd rather just answer the questions. It's actually a fairly simple business model in our case. As you'll see on the front page, Advantex Research has been around for well more than 30 years. We do a lot of work for the Department of Energy. That's actually where I am today. I'm in Houston with the Department of Energy, Shell, and NASA in meetings today. So I apologize I couldn't attend in person. But the business case, what we have in Ruidoso is quite simple. Basically, we're taking existing shipping containers most of these are going to be only 20 feet long. They have refrigeration devices on them. And during the space shuttle program, we worked with NASA to come up with advanced installation solutions, which they have asked and the Department of Energy has asked us to take and commercialize. The material that we'll be using is deemed extremely safe. It's been used, right? So it's fairly straightforward material. We use laser cutters to cut the material. It's safe, it's hydrophobic. I mean, it's obviously flame proof and everything else. And so basically what we've done is we've been able to design the next generation shipping container. And the primary reason for this design was during COVID, a lot of the initial vaccines could not be delivered because they had to be maintained at a much colder temperature than any shipping container commercially available was able to have. And so we were pretty far along during the design of it before COVID, but now we've finalized the design. We will be doing the first two in Florida at Kennedy Space Center. Once we've refined the process in manufacturing, our goal is to create one, probably at most two of these containers a week in Ruidoso as the orders come in. And so one of the reasons why we do meet with the Department of Energy and Homeland Security is to ensure that we can have these containers readily available if the need ever comes up. In the meantime, we have found a need for other pharmaceuticals that they don't necessarily need to get as cold as the COVID vaccine did, but they are worried about long travels of the vaccine across places like New Mexico and Arizona. And our containers can actually guarantee that the vaccines will stay at a comfortable temperature, no matter how far the distance and no matter how long they have to be. So it's like I said, it's a fairly simple process. The building at 127 Vision Drive is ideal. We can actually put 20-foot containers inside the building to do the modifications. If for any reason we needed to do anything in the yard, I have talked to other people in the city about putting up, and we do have an application in to put up a fence, which is required because the containers cannot be seen from the street. And so I think that's, we can definitely take care of that if this is approved today. We'll be moving forward with everything to put the fence up before any actual development gets done. I did get a chance to read the one question that was put forth before the committee about anything on First Street. First of all, we would never use First Street for any of our traffic. It's not suitable for what we need to do. Secondly, all of our employees are actually required to park in our yard. So we will never have personal or commercial trucks at all in the street. And then delivery times for our commercial vehicles to either drop off or pick up our containers is limited between the hours of 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. during business days. And the most time they're in the yard, luckily the yard at 127, one reason why we really liked it is the yard's big enough so the trucks, as soon as they get there, they are immediately off the road. So there's not much blocking of traffic. And as I believe I mentioned earlier, I think the number of deliveries, initially it's going to be very, very few. At most, it would grow up to about 2 trips per week. And if it goes beyond that, I'll be glad to come back before the city and explain how the business grows. So I'm open for other questions if you have any.
Yeah, we had several last month, but that's been last month. So anybody have any questions that you have for the applicant?
Are the containers going to stay on a trailer? Or are they going to be on the ground or?
Yeah, they come in on a flatbed. We remove them off a flatbed. We have a special equipment that lifts them up and actually moves them indoor.
Okay.
So they're not on the trailer during retrofit.
Okay, you said you're doing mainly 20-foot containers?
That's correct. Initially, all the initial orders that we have are all 20 foot.
Okay.
That's correct.
Your letter of intent said 20 to 40. That's why the
That's
question.
correct. So when I did the letter of intent, that was before we started getting hard orders for it. All the initial orders right now are at 20 foot. But if we were to go to a 40 foot, the fence would have to be fully installed and we'd have to meet all the city's needs. And so if something were to happen sooner than later, we'll be able to do all the work inside the building while we construct the fence.
The site plan shows kind of, the yellow line says the fence and then 2 existing bays from the existing structure to back up. So it kind of appears as if there's storage outside, but they're all going to be inside.
Initially, that's correct. And if it's ever outside, like I said, I'll be glad to come back to the city to discuss this. Initially, so that site plan was initially put forth just as a talking point.
Correct.
So that I could find out what is acceptable and what would be within the current confines of the city ordinances.
How many employees are you going to have?
We're probably just going to have 2 working on those trailers, maybe 3. We do have a very nice office space. We've been working on that space for about 9 months or so, building out the office space and building out computer and IT. Actually, one of the individuals in the audience right there is our IT director, and he's there to help install, get the internet and everything up and operational right now. But our goal is the front half of the building is primarily used for office space, and then the back half would only be used for the commercial piece of working on the trailers.
So we have pictures of the front of the building where there's 3 cars in front of, that is your employee parking.
Yes, that's correct.
Will there be any
Completely-
customers coming to your facility?
No, there will be no customers coming to the facility at all.
Questions?
Most of these containers are being shipped to California.
Okay, so being that it's enclosed, again, as we rehab these containers, will there be noise, smell, fumes, et cetera, coming out of the building?
Almost none. Well, definitely no fumes and no smell. That's one thing that we have, the equipment and especially all the materials that are being utilized, once again, have all been approved by NASA. And because of that, they cannot have any vapors, fumes, or anything associated with them. The sounds, you may hear some stuff inside the building from time to time, but most of the time these things are going to be completely enclosed inside doors. We don't have, we have an air compressor that will go off from time to time. Once again, not very loud. And all the cutting devices that we use are actually laser cutters, so they're extremely very quiet. And those will be placed inside the building, obviously.
Okay.
What are your hours of operation?
Well, we haven't set that up yet. We typically get there around 7:30 and go until about 5:30. We don't run a second shift. We don't really need to at this point.
Commissioners, any other questions before I open up public hearing? Rick?
I'm curious, just how come Ruidoso?
Well, that's a good question. Ultimately, what we'd like to do is, first of all, we're just trying to figure out to do this. This is a request that came in for us to create these containers. And so we immediately looked for a place to do it. Our ultimate goal is something that we'll get to in another meeting later. In about a year from now, we've been asked by the Department of Energy to start doing some cryogenic testing there. It only uses liquid nitrogen. So once again, it's an inert gas. There's nothing dangerous to it at all. But Ruidoso is uniquely situated at 7,000 feet above sea level. A lot of the cryogenic testing is done at either near zero in Florida. We just survived the hurricane. The eye of the hurricane went right over us and had no damage at all. That's where a large headquarters is and our large research facility is. But the Ruidoso is the same elevation as parts of the Department of Energy in Boulder. We did look at Boulder. Obviously, the costs are extremely high. I've been coming to Ruidoso since I was 5 years old. I own a home there. Just absolutely love Ruidoso. We spend months out of the year there. And so a number of reasons. I love the city. I like to support the city. I'd like to give jobs back, as well as it just so happened to be the right elevation for us to do the testing, if we get to that point.
Thanks, Rick. I had the same question. Afraid to ask it. Any other commissioners? Commissioners online? Jacob, Vicky.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Go ahead, sir.
And I think I know the answer, but I want to clarify, Mr. Bateman. It seems like all of the manufacturing outside of noise will be self-contained in the property.
That's correct.
And there's no intention or no outside of the lot line being impacted by the heat of the cutting or you've already addressed the smell.
Oh, no, it's actually pretty interesting. I'll be glad once we get the equipment there to bring people by to look at it. We do have some very high-tech laser cutters and 3D printers that we use. And it's really it's a marvel to watch these things go. But yeah, it's very clean. It's one reason why we can actually mass produce these is because if we had to, you really can't cut some of this material by hand. You can't really use a saw on it. It's too fragile in some ways. And these are precision cuts. And I'm bringing one of my large laser printer. If this gets approved, I'll be bringing one of my larger laser printers into the shop and getting it set up. But no, there's almost no smell, no dust, nothing comes out of this at all.
Gotcha. And Mr. Bateman, is there a fan or a unique HVAC system for this process that's required with the cutting?
We have a standard HVAC system in there. It was actually the building used to be a church, and basically we just retrofitted that, and it's fine. All the dust and everything, because most of the work we do is on government facilities, we have to capture nearly 100% of the particles. So any vent systems and stuff like that, we're bringing all the venting systems that we already have and commercially available with us to install.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bateman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Williams, you have any questions?
Of course.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. Once as you retrofit, are you taking materials out of these containers? And if so, are they as safe as what you're putting back in? And how will they be dispensed of?
Yeah, there's no removal of any device. So we work very closely with a company called Thermo King. And the trailers are the ones they have commercially available right now. All we do to them is augment them. So in addition to the insulation, what makes these trailers very special is we have channels on all four sides in the back that keeps the cold air flowing around the insulation. But the insulation is inset about 1 to 2 inches inside, so it's a container inside of a container. So we're only adding to it. No, we don't remove anything from it.
My other question was, once you remove the container from the trailer, you do your work on it, how long do you think, once it's completed, before it would be placed back on a receptacle trailer and removed from the premises?
We're hoping to get to the speed of 1 container per week and maybe one time get up to 2 containers. Realistically, it's just 1 container a week is what we'll be shooting for. We are planning on only 42 weeks of operations per year because that road there on Vision Drive can get slick due to foul weather. And this is one thing we don't want to, we have the luxury, luckily, not to have to force these things out. So anytime the weather conditions or the road conditions are not acceptable for us to travel on, then the shop will not be operational.
Thank you.
Thank you. You brought up a question of mine, and Adam Sanchez is here, and I guess my question is about the condition of the road, the width of the road, how much right-of-way is there, and is there enough, I guess, width and area to turn and turn trailers and trucks?
Yeah, so the yard itself is plenty big for this. And so we do have a professional truck driver that has come to the property and looked at it. And basically the road is plenty big to get in and out of. Luckily, we're hoping to move to something that's much smaller than your typical semi truck. If we're only using these 20-foot containers, that allows us to have a much smaller truck and a much smaller bed to bring these things in and out. Obviously, that's the best way to go for us because the fuel mileage is better. So that's the initial plan at this point.
Adam, condition of the road?
Condition of the road is not too bad. It's a 24-foot right away, I believe.
Okay.
Like I said, there is some tight turns getting in and out of there, but if he's going to be able to, if he can turn around in his yard and come back out, I mean, the egress is going to be the worst part of him. The circle there at
Right.
Sutterth is going to be the worst part for him.
Correct. I had to get you up here before sitting in the corner. All right, if there's no more questions from the Planning and Zoning Commission, I am going to open up the public hearing. Is there anybody that wishes to speak for or against this application? I don't see any in public. What about online? I don't know if they know how to raise hands with Zoom or speak up. So Sam, we have received one letter. Is it within the 200 feet area?
Yes, Ms. Coughlin is within the 200 feet.
Okay. So does that mean the letter can go into the record, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
We're within our notification area.
Yep. Okay, hearing none, seeing no other public comment, I'm going to close the public hearing. Commissioners, what's your pleasure? So as they're thinking of their great motion they're going to give me, have you seen the conditions that staff has put up on you for, in case of approval?
Yes, we have, and everything's acceptable.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman Briley?
Yes, ma'am.
I have one other question. How many is there a code restriction on the number of containers that can be allowed on this? Do we need to put that in the conditional use as well if we want to restrict that, or how's that handled?
While she's thinking, it is the right of the commission to put conditions upon there. such as if you want to limit the outdoor parking to no more than 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 or whatever. And so that is the commission's right to do that. However, as the question is about the containers themselves.
We hadn't, Chairman, members of the commission, we hadn't placed a number because they're going to be screened, and so they wouldn't be visible to the neighbors. So if they fit and they're still able to get their trucks in there, we didn't place a number.
Is it illegal for them to park on the road
Yes, ma'am.
or place the container on the road?
We would never do that.
I think she was hinting at, as part of the unloading process or loading process.
All
if
the
you're gonna use the road.
loading and unloading process has to be done on the yard. We have a special device that lifts these up, and we'll be placing them inside. Putting them down the road would actually be very disadvantaged to us. And so we'll only be loading and unloading. If you put that down in the condition, that's fine as well. But there's no scenario where a container would even get close to the road, because if you'll notice on the look of the building, the bays are actually in the very back of the building. And they will be loading directly out of the bay. The device is used to slide them out, lift them up, and put on the back of the truck. But yeah, if you want to add that on there, no containers on the road or anything like that, or in front of the building, that's very acceptable as well.
Commissioners, what's your pleasure?
One other question. Have you started construction of the fence yet, or are you applying for that, or?
We applied, we put it on hold until we got word from the commission on this. And so once we hear back, probably before the first year, depending on weather, we'll go ahead and start on the fence. As I mentioned, we're actually building the first 2 in Florida. But before we do that, I was trying to get everything approved here for Ruidoso.
Sure.
And it'd be a fully screened fence, not a chain link.
Yes, that's correct.
Right.
It will probably go up to the maximum height that's allowable by the city or by the village.
6 feet.
Just to make sure there's no doubts. The containers, like I said, they're laying flat on the ground. They're 9.5 feet high. And so our goal would be to put in a 10-foot fence.
Very good. So Sam, I saw messages in the chat popping through about this thing, but Stephanie replied, the chat is not a place to put in your public comment. So I just want people to let them know you had your chance during the public hearing to speak up. So thank you, Stephanie, for telling them that.
And in case you're wondering, the comment was about noises and everything that probably was not brought up in the public hearing because that was previously addressed in comments.
Any more questions? Any motions? Any actions?
Yeah. Based upon the foregoing findings of fact per 54-68 and 54-100 of the Village Code, I move to grant the requested conditional use approval for case CU-2022-345 with the conditions stated in the case report.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Can I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Baugh?
Aye.
Commissioner Briley?
Yes.
Commissioner Byers?
Aye.
Commissioner McElina?
Aye.
Commissioner Richardson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rigsby?
Aye.
Commissioner Williams? Commissioner Williams?
Aye.
Motion carries with all ayes.
Thank you. Gentlemen, get on to your business. Sounds good.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Chill out.
I want to go over there. I want to go over there.
I want a tour.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have it set up so everybody can come have a tour soon.
Okay, I guess you're hearing us mumble, huh? Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
We want to see how
We'd love
this.
to have you over. We're very proud of the office space we had built up. We had a local craftsman worked with us for, like I said, 9 months or so, and he's done a fabulous job. And we hired him on as a full-time employee now.
So the process and everything with NASA, this is top secret stuff, or is this just?
Oh, no, none of it. This is commercialization
Okay.
of stuff. So no, it's, we do have some government equipment on site. So if you go to the facility, you'll see government property on site. They allow us to do that. When we actually officially move it on, we'll have to enhance the security, the cameras and everything, which we'll be doing after the first year as well. But no, we'd love for y'all to come out and see. It's turned into a beautiful location.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll let y'all go. Bye. Thank you.
All right, so next item on the agenda. Where's my stuff? Conditional use approval request case 2022-394. Sam, you want to give us a update and briefing on this case, please?
Thank you, Chairman, Commission members. Our applicant is requesting approval of the cannabis manufacturing of a Class 2 from the Regulation and Licensing Division to expand the current operations to include the assembly of pre-rolls, packaging of the product, as well as the infusion of foods with pre-extracted cannabis oil within the regulations of the Class 2 license within the C2 Community Commercial District located at 101 Meacham Drive, Lot 1A, Block 2 of the McCarty Addition subdivision. This license does not allow for the extraction of cannabis from the product of the oil, so.
Is the applicant here?
We do.
Hi. So you want to, I need to swear you in first. Yes, sit at the table. Can you state your name and swear to tell truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do. My name is Arnold Duke. I have been coming to Ruidoso since 1974, bought my first house in 1989, and moved here full-time 3 years ago. I own multiple properties and businesses here in town, including this building and this business. When I first decided to open this business, I didn't know anything about this business. And since April 1st, I've become quite an expert. The reason I want to start manufacturing, aside from the retail business that we have on location, is at the present time, no one in New Mexico makes any sugar-free edibles with cannabis. And it's no secret that cannabis is a magic medical properties for people that have certain illnesses, including cancer. And cancer patients can't have sugar. So not only does the THC fight the cancer, but it also relieves the pain and anxiety of the cancer. So I was shocked this morning when I read some of the letters that I guess Samantha or someone emailed me to the opposition. And it became very apparent to me that people have no conception of all of what we want to do. And I feel bad that they have all these concerns that don't exist. And that's why I'm happy to have this opportunity to explain to you and to them exactly what we want to do.
Excellent. Proceed, because I know I've read all the questions too, so.
Okay, so and I just got it today, and I only quickly skimmed some of the letters. And I have been to the green zone in Oakland, California, where you can smell pot miles away. We're not doing anything like that at all. We want to do two functions in the building behind where the store is. The first activity we want to do is just roll joints, roll cigarettes. We take the flower that we have purchased. It goes through a small machine. It makes less noise than a vacuum cleaner, and it rolls cigarettes. It rolls joints. We currently buy them from a supplier here in the state, but they're substandard, and we want to make our own. The second activity we want to do there is make sugar-free pectin edibles in gummy forms and hard candies. The machine that makes those is a little bit larger than this table that I'm sitting at. It also makes about the same noise level that a vacuum cleaner does. We're not processing cannabis and THC. We're not extracting anything. We're not growing anything. There are no smells. There is no noise to speak of. and it is a very small-scale operation to support our retail business. And we also have the expectation and hope that we will be able to supply our sugar-free gummies and candies to other cannabis stores in the state of New Mexico. So I'm a property owner. I own commercial and residential properties. I would never want any business to encroach on any of my properties that would harm the value of my property. I'm a father, I'm a grandfather, and this is a very small scale, very quiet, extremely safe. There's no danger. I was reading there's dangers of fires and things that people are saying. That just doesn't exist.
The house you mentioned behind the building, is that part of this lot, or is it on the residential
same
side?
lot.
It's the same lot. Okay. Couldn't tell by
It's
our
all the
maps.
same zoning, it's all the same property.
Okay, commissioners, questions for the applicant?
I do want to add one other point.
Go ahead.
I have an operating partner that actually runs the business. I don't run it. I don't really participate other than major decisions, things like this. He is an ex-Ruidoso police officer, and he's also an ex-undercover narcotic agent that worked here in Ruidoso. So we both have long ties to the community.
Very good. Questions? Questions? So I guess I will ask our attorney and director. So the cannabis laws, when we talk about levels 1s and 2s, I guess I missed that training. And so explain to me what the different levels are and what that means, and let them take. I know you're educated on us, but we need to be educated as well.
I'll go ahead and read it. As defined by the state, Class 1, a licensee can only package or repackage cannabis products or labels or relabels the cannabis product containers. Class 2, a licensee can conduct Class 1 activities and manufacture edible products or topical products using infusion processes or other types of cannabis products other than extracts or concentrates, and does not conduct extractions. Class 3 is a licensee that conducts Class 1 and 2 activities and extracts using mechanical methods and non-volatile solvents. And Class 4, a licensee that conducts Class 1, 2, and 3 activities and extracts using volatile solvents and supercritical CO2.
Thank you. So we're talking about, your request says the infusion of foods with pre-extracted oil. So there's not going to be pot plants everywhere, and we're doing all kinds of packaging and stuffing them into brownies and stuff, right?
So again, to outline the two things we're going to be doing is, number one, we do take flour that we have purchased and we roll essentially cigarettes, joints they're called, blunts.
Right.
The other thing is we will have a vat of pectin, and you add a few drops of oil to it that we buy that's manufactured elsewhere, and it just mixes it and then drops it in little molds and then cools the molds and dumps them out.
Sam, I guess curiosity, do we have any Class 3s or 4s in town yet?
We do not.
We don't, okay. So this is the highest level we've gone to so far.
You all did approve one for hemp, though, if you'll recall, near lotions and potions, but it wasn't cannabis.
Right. And we approved one last meeting for rolling, or 2 meetings ago was for the
The
pre-rolls.
Class 2,
Right,
yeah.
or maybe that was one, I don't know.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, go ahead.
I have a question. So within the I guess this is the letter from the regulating body in New Mexico, it states that the manufacturing must have certain environmental and equipment that is not necessarily the case right now. Do you have plans for altering the building so you can do this manufacturing? What does that look like in terms of the extent? Like, is it a commercial kitchen that you have to have? Is there certain material that like you have to have, or certain ways that you have to alter the building?
Yeah, we will add a commercial kitchen. Right now, it's basically 4 walls. And before we spent any money, I wanted to make sure that we were gonna be able to do this. So as soon as I get this approval, we will install a commercial kitchen and get to work right away.
Chairman, commission members, just to add to that, we will ensure through the building department that the appropriate use is being changed over, and they'll have to go through the environment department to make sure that the waste is being eliminated properly, and you'll see those within the case report of the conditions placed.
Point of clarification, Mr. Chairman.
ahead.
Sam, they're gonna have to rezone that lot? Is that what you're describing?
No, within the building code, there's different uses. So if you're a retail operation and you're going to go and become, say, like a residential home, you'd have to, for lack of a better term, retrofit the building to make sure that you're meeting the standards of the use. And so that's through the International Building Code.
I got one question.
Yeah, question. Go ahead.
So what you're doing right now is you're actually buying your blunts and you're just simply reselling them.
Correct.
So basically, you're gonna still have it separated off from the front of your store, and all you're gonna do is actually be putting it together there instead of off-site,
That's correct.
right? But the average person walking in isn't gonna walk in and say, wow, this place is, really changed. We know you guys are doing something else here. Are they gonna be able to smell stuff? Or how's it gonna be?
The only difference will be they'll notice that all of a sudden they're getting a much better product. That's it.
Okay, so I guess I'm gonna, read a clip out of the Regulation and Licensing Department documentation. And so, and I think that's what he was getting at. And I just want to read this for the record for everybody online to also hear. To ensure consumer safety for the products that will be ingested orally or placed topically on the body, Class 2 through 4 licenses must follow additional health and safety requirements as Class 1 licenses are exempt from. So beyond this, you still have Environment Department, you have regulation and licensing to go through, you have everything else. This is just step 1.
Sure, they'll be wearing hairnets with masks and rubber gloves and white vest and the whole works, sure.
Yep.
Yeah, this is just the first step.
Yeah. So address the parking. I saw that in a lot of people's comments that there's a lot of your existing employees parking down the streets. There's not enough parking for rush hour, as you would say. Can you address the traffic and the parking, please?
Well, a little bit, sure. Of course, when April 1st came, this was a brand-new novelty, and everybody rushed like crazy for the first couple of months. Now things have settled down. There's quite a number of stores in this town, and I think we've gone from 200 transactions a day down to about 50 transactions a day. And there's some stores that are doing 5 transactions a day or 3, and they'll soon be closing. So the big rush, the big gold rush is totally over. We are not parking at all in the alleys or on the streets or in the residence or in the neighborhood. Everybody's parked in our parking lot. I don't know exactly how many spaces we have there. I know this letter says we need 18, and I think we have close to that. But I own probably the largest store in Midtown called the Ruidoso Trading Post, and I don't have 1 parking space. So for me to have 15 or 18 here, I think is quite a bit. Our customers are very quick. They come in, they know what they want, they're there a few seconds, and they leave. It's not like they're coming there to see a movie and spend 2 or 3 hours. It's a very, very fast turnover. So I personally have seen on a Friday night at 7 o'clock, the parking lot's jammed, but that's almost the exception. It's just not it's really not a problem in my mind. I know initially the first month it was crazy there, but the novelty is already worn off and everybody's used to it. It's not a big deal anymore.
Sam, you have the comment in the recommendation to have the proper parking requirements. During your staff review, have you found that there is not enough?
With the expansion of the additional square footage for the manufacturing, they are lacking 6 parking spaces. I don't see where they would have an opportunity to add 6 additional spaces. It looks like they are maxed out. I did speak with his partner, and he said they would not be expanding the workforce there. They were going to be able to conduct this new operation with the existing staff. I also followed up with the police department to see call cards for Sleepy Hollow because a lot of our concerns were regarding parking, and we didn't have a single complaint documented with our dispatch center. So they would need to ask you all for a variance to our parking requirements for off-street parking.
And that's not part of this.
You all could accept the deviation of what staff has recommended, the 18 spots with 2 handicap. And just to clarify, his other stores in our C3 district, and that doesn't require parking spaces for our businesses down there because there's so much public parking.
I know. Okay. Other questions? Other concerns? Vicki, you want to wait for after public hearing to ask your questions? Did she leave us?
Chairman Briley, no, I haven't come up with any that
Okay.
I.
Well, good. Well, let's go ahead and open this up to public hearing. We have seen a lot of input. There might be some people here in line, and so online and in person. So I am going to try and limit everybody to a 3 to 5 minutes. I ask everybody not to repeat themselves and repeat what the previous people have said. And so I would, I guess, ask for anybody who's been within the 200-foot notification area to be, I'm going to ask you to go first, just because you are part of the notification area, and then we'll open it up to everybody else that wishes to speak for or against this. So, Mr. Duke, if you don't mind, we'll let people come and void. So I'm going to open up the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, you said you would allow 3 to 5 minutes. Can you be more specific?
3 minutes.
Okay. As long as it's 3 minutes for everybody.
It's 3 minutes for everybody. Understood. Okay. So anybody that is within the 200-foot notification area wishes to speak.
You get older. This guy over here knew me when I wasn't this bad. Unfortunately, my 86th birthday is Saturday.
Unfortunately. That's fortunate.
I'm almost getting to the point where I don't care to get older.
Yes, sir. Sir, I'm going to have to swear you in.
I'm Robert M. Williams, and I own a piece of property about 50 feet from his property,
You swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth?
which is, yeah,
Okay, thank you.
which is across the river.
Yes, sir.
While I've been in the real estate business for 60-some-odd years, I never have hoped to deny somebody from making money from their investment, and I don't this man either. The biggest problem is the parking. When they redid that out front, they went from 10 parking places to 4. And so there's not a lot of extra parking, and my wife has the store downstairs, which is a decorating store, which is in and out traffic. So it's not people that are there going to be like the restaurant that had been there. There's, you got people that are there all day long, and the whole problem. We also have 7 spaces on the side on Evans Street. So for us, we have what we need, except for people coming and going in front, and we'd like for that to be put in a position where they can't come park all day long and all. And unfortunately, we've had some of those do that and some with campers. And so, you know, we all know you can pass all these rules, but you gotta we're dealing with people out there. And what can you get them to do? I've thought maybe you need to put 30 or a 1 hour parking limit sign out front or something to at least tell people you can't park there overnight. And now across the street, we got 5 houses that have been sitting there 20 years since I've been in this location, that thank God this guy is fixing them up and looks like he's gonna do a good job. I don't know where he's parking people there because there's almost nothing in front of him over there. But what I anticipate there is people probably park over there in our space, and we have had them park overnight, and that way you can't, the next morning, have a spot where somebody can come into my wife's store.
1 minute warning.
Pardon?
1 minute left.
Yeah, we're limiting everybody to 3 minutes.
Anyway, that's my concern. Plus, 50 feet across the river, I don't want to smell anything. I want to be sure we're assured that that's not going to happen. But as far as this man doing his business, I'm for him, whatever it takes for him to do, as long as it doesn't affect the neighborhood. Now, the streets are 20 feet wide. They were done, I don't know how many years. And those streets don't allow for any off-street parking. So these are things y'all need to consider. But outside of that, that's pretty much it, I guess.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is there anybody else within the notification area that wishes to speak for or against this? Anybody?
Yeah, my name is Michael Miles. Is now the time to speak?
Yes, sir. You swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth?
I absolutely do.
Thanks, sir.
Let me get a little video. So a couple statements that the gentleman made. And he says that the statement about the parking is actually just false. It's his employees and they're parking on the street to allow the customers parking next to his building. I mean, we stay there, we know, we see them get out and the cars park there most of the day. So that's one thing. On one hand, he mentioned it's a small scale operation, but on the other hand, he states that he wants to supply the whole state of New Mexico. So I don't know which it is, but he kind of, I don't know, he's, like I said, on one hand, one thing, and on the other hand, the other thing. So I don't know exactly what he wants to do. I mean, I would think it would be difficult to hold the smell down, but like everybody's been talking about, it's mostly about the parking. And that's all I got, unless you have some specific questions to me. My address is 106 Sleepy Hollow and 108 Sleepy Hollow.
Mr. Chairman, that reminds me that anybody on either side can ask questions of any other witness.
Cross-examine. Yeah, that is correct.
So my point of bringing that up is that if he would like to ask the applicant those questions, he has the ability
and anybody else does too.
Correct.
Well, he can just clarify, is it a small scale operation or do you plan on blowing it up and supplying the whole state of New Mexico like you stated?
And address the committee.
I am buying a machine that will make more than 20,000 gummies a day if I want to run it that much. Again, it's the size of this table that I'm sitting at. It makes the same noise that your vacuum cleaner does, and there is really no smell. I mean, the oil itself does not have a smell. The sugar-free pectin is similar to making Jell-O in your kitchen is the smell. So if you're not in that room, you're not going to smell anything, and if you're not in that room, you're not going to hear anything.
Okay.
Fair enough. So you don't think any smells will be oozing out of the operation even?
And there's a slight sweet smell. Smells like somebody is baking lime cookies in the oven. And no, there's no There's no smell of cannabis whatsoever.
including the rolling of the marijuana cigarettes.
I will be happy to meet you there tomorrow and give you a demonstration and show you what the smell is like. If you're not in the room, you're not going to smell it. If you walk up to that building, outside the building, there's 100 pounds of marijuana in that building, but you don't smell it outside of the building. Once you open the door, you can smell it, but you don't smell it outside the building. And the oil that we use has really no smell at all.
And I'm clear on that. It was more of the rolling operations that I think would agitate the product a little bit, but that was more my question.
And I'm
The other question is you stated that there was a bombardment early on in your operations, which we witnessed, but we have actually talked, the employees park on the street. I've only seen a few lost buyers actually on the street.
Employees are no longer parking on the street at all. And we've also gone from 7 employees there during the day to 3 or 4, because we don't need 7 employees during the day. I mean, business has really compressed since opening.
I get that. Is that a recent thing that they quit parking on the street, or recent as in a month?
I'm not there on a daily basis, but it's my understanding for 2 months they haven't parked anywhere on the street.
Okay, I would claim that as being untrue, as just as a personal witness to that, but that's.
And if parking becomes a problem, I own lots of property in that immediate area where I can relocate cars.
Let me say this, he did work with my wife, you have worked with my wife before.
I'm not aware of that. But
Well, and parking in the front, and you took care of it. That's what I want to say. He did take care of it.
yeah, so I mean, I want to be a good community neighbor to everybody, and I don't want to cause any disruption to anybody's life. Again, I said I'm a property owner here, and I don't want anybody encroaching on my property in any way. And if parking becomes a problem, I own lots of properties within a walking distance of there where I can park probably 50 cars. But it's never going to be that situation.
Yeah.
But I know initially the first month of April and the next month, that place was a zoo. But anybody can go by any time and see it's not the case. And we are no longer parking on that street.
Well, thank you for that.
Yes.
I have no further comments.
Thank you. Do we have any others that wish to comment on behalf of this? And I will allow, well, I don't see a lot of people coming. So, yes, sir, come on up and state your name and be sworn in, please. You might want to pull the chair, yeah, just because people are allowed to examine and cross-examine and everything. State your name, sir.
My name is John Crump. I live at 127 Sleepy Hollow.
Promise to tell the truth, nothing but the truth?
You got it.
Thank you.
I've been inundated by my neighbors. I live just the other side of the bridge on Sleepy Hollow. And the statement that he made that none of his employees are parking on the street or not on his property is not true. Because one of his employees in a black Dodge pickup is parked on some people's property down the street, as when I came to this meeting today. And from the time that store opened until his notices went out to my neighbors, they were parking all up and down Sleepy Hollow. They were parking on both sides of the dumpsters. They were parking on both sides of the mailboxes. We had to park in the middle of the street to get our own mail. Now, should I have filed a complaint? Sure. Next time, I won't be so gracious, because I give everybody an opportunity to do business in this community and to be a good neighbor, but that hasn't been the case. But I'm not going to go just on the parking situation. It's really bad, and he needs to have parking spaces that were asked about in the original application for the store. And if he intends to increase his business, he must be made to have additional parking spaces. And that needs to be part of the application process, period. Now, let's talk about the codes. I asked early on about the codes as they relate to this application. And I was told by the Village of Ruidoso that they do not have codes in place for manufacturing. They have codes in place for retail sales, but that the way the state statutes came in, they included manufacturing. Now, manufacturing goes to 4 different levels, and it was not clearly defined in his application to go into manufacturing to any of us other than maybe within 200 feet, that he was going for a code 2 license. And I have concerns about that because different codes of license have restrictions in areas in so many feet of that manufacturing property. And they cannot be, those properties in association with that cannot be daycare centers. They cannot be senior care centers. They cannot be health care centers. There's all kinds of states on the federal regulation that I don't see in the city's regulation. And I was told that they're not there. In the state, it says right under 68867 under this code, prior to submission of a license, application for a class 2, 3, or 4 cannabis manufacturer license, each applicant must engage in the manufacturing of edible or topical cannabis products or edible or topical cannabis finished products shall provide the NMED all certification that the facility comes up to code, that the operators are trained and up to code, that the equipment will be constructed and maintained in accordance. That has to be presented to you before you issue him a certificate. And that hadn't been done. So, in closing,
thank you.
Until this Village of Ruidoso is in a position to address the issues associated with cannabis in an orderly and religious manner, we don't need to be considering license at all.
Thank you.
Chairman, Commission members, I'd just like to clarify the distance from the types of services. It's just licensed daycares and schools. Religious and healthcare are not listed in there. And the business registration will not be issued until he's in compliance with the change of occupancy for our building code, the environment department, and potentially even the state fire marshal's office, depending on the extent of his manufacturing facility.
So as he stated, since we are going on a conditional use, we're not granting licensure or operational procedures. That's part of your next step, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
And I'd just like to respond to his one comment about the black pickup truck that may be parked there today. That is parked, I believe, on Ruben Herrera's property. And he's a friend of ours, and he allows us to park on his property. We have his permission. So I wanted you to be clear on that, because there very well could be a car there today on his property. Yes.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak for or against this? I will now open it up to anybody. Yes,
Pat Wheeland.
Mr. Wieland, go ahead. State your name and swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, please. Need to unmute.
There, okay.
There you go.
I don't
Do you
know
swear-
how to provide the video of it.
That's
Is that
okay. I see your hand raising. Do you swear to tell the truth?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
Go ahead. State your case. You got
I'm
3
here-
minutes.
Okay. Our home is at 123 Evans Road. We've owned it for 28 years. We also own 118 Sleepy Hollow across the river. My wife and I have been coming to Ruidoso all of our lives since we were 3 years old. We've been in Evans Road for 28 years, and now, for the last 10 years or so, we spend about half of our time in Ruidoso. In the first sentence in this month's Ruidoso Insider, Mayor Crawford states that fall is in the air and it is a beautiful time to be in Ruidoso, end quote. Very true. But now is not the time to drop the ball. I hear a lot about, well, the business was really big at first, but it's dropped off. We can't rely on that. Whatever you do today is going to be permanent. It's going to be, well, what happens if all of a sudden he wants to grow the business more? Once whatever use is allowed, then you can't go back. Bottom line, and I don't want to take a lot of your time, your valuable time, is that from the Vision Shopping Center all the way to the Meacham Sutter intersection to Casablanca, Michael J's, Albertsons, Meacham is a commercial area, not a manufacturing area. There are a lot of other places where he can go to do that. Why put it right in the middle of a commercial area that abuts residential neighborhoods, quiet, serene residential neighborhoods that have been there for decades? So, and also every article that I've read on the production of cannabis into candies, gumballs, whatever else, produces a smell. The applicant said it's a nice, sweet smell. You wouldn't know. No, it is not a sweet smell to me. I'm sorry. When I go to Ruidoso, I want to smell the clean mountain air. I don't want to smell a Grateful Dead concert. So, and then just in closing, there is a big problem with the parking on our little streets. Evans Road and Sleepy Hollow Road are very narrow. You can say all day long, we've got less employees now, but once it's granted, he can go ahead and increase the employees back again. And when you've got Sleepy Hollow, for instance, blocked with overflow traffic parking there, there's no way you're going to get an emergency vehicle in there and to a fire, or God forbid, somebody having a heart attack. So what happens when that happens? So anyway, I'm very much opposed to it, and I believe that the applicant is acting in good faith as far as his properties, and being here and loving Ruidoso, so do I. But I think there are other places he can go that are much more appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you.
And my only response to that is the word manufacturing sounds like a big thing. And what we are doing is we are essentially rolling cigarettes and making lollipops and gummy bears, and that's it. We're not manufacturing big things with lots of chemicals and lots of pollution, and there's no bad fumes to recapture. I mean, it's just a very small thing. And I know that people that don't understand what it is don't understand. And I accept that and I understand that. And, you know, for the record, my name is Arnold Duke. My cell phone is 240-401-1146. And I would love to meet you in person and hold you by your hand and walk you through the building and let you smell what it might smell like and see what it is. It's a very small, little manufacturing plant. It's something that could be done on a kitchen table.
Thank you.
Can I respond to that, please?
Go ahead.
You mentioned, Mr. Duke, that you're going to have a kitchen. Why do you have a kitchen? Are you going to cook the cannabis?
No, we're not going to cook any cannabis at all. It's part of the license with the state. You must have a commercial kitchen. You must have a 3-compartment sink to wash dishes, even if you have no dishes to wash. So we have to do more things than are really necessary. There's companies in Albuquerque that are manufacturing these things that I have visited, and I've been through a lot of them, that are much larger than what we're gonna be doing. And you still have to have lots of bells and whistles you normally wouldn't need for an operation like that, but it's a state law, you must have a complete commercial kitchen. So even, we'll have things that we won't even be using.
But you did mention that there would be smells. And of course, the sweet smell is something that what's sweet to someone is not sweet to someone else.
I agree with that.
So before we open up Pandora's box, I think that this type of facility needs to be somewhere in a manufacturing area. It's called manufacturing for a reason. So I think it needs to be in an area that is appropriate.
And I hear
And
you.
also, one last thing, please, regarding the parking. I agree with Mr. Crunk 100% that in addressing the parking, it needs to be the parking requirement for additional employees, as Sam stated. But because sometime in the future, he can go ahead and add those employees back. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go to the next person. Any next person wish to speak? Am I hearing anybody? Am I seeing anybody? Stephanie, anybody online raising their hand?
And just one comment on the last gentleman's comment about manufacturing. The state of New Mexico says that the act of putting cannabis flower into a rolling paper and rolling a cigarette, that is manufacturing a cigarette, and that's really what we're doing.
No, you're not.
All right, I'm going to give another 10 seconds to anybody that wishes to speak up for or against this. Hearing none, I'm going to close this public hearing. All right, so during the public hearing, I wrote down several questions, I guess, that I have. So,
Lunch.
is Adam getting ready for me to ask questions to you? But I am. Come on, Adam, get over here. Okay, so anyway, delivery of and packaging and delivering to various places, other places in New Mexico or Ruidoso. Is this by large trucks, UPS trucks, carrier trucks, courier trucks? I'm looking at the parking and traffic and big trucks taking up spaces and such. How is this being to and from your business?
Okay, good question. I am the only one in Ruidoso that currently has a cannabis courier license. So I'm the only person in this whole area that has a license to be able to pick up and deliver cannabis. So, for example, if you owned another cannabis store across from town, I can legally transfer it to you or anybody else, because I have a courier license that I got from the state. There's a fee for that, and there's nobody else that even has one here. But again, $50,000 worth of gummy bears fits in the backseat of my pickup truck. So there's no big trucks, there's no vans even. I mean, you know, I own a Hummer, an FJ Cruiser, and a pickup truck, those three vehicles, and that would be the only trucks that would ever be going around delivering and picking up.
So you are the courier for the flower coming in for the pre-rolled cigarettes?
Yes.
Okay. So one of the comments was overnight parking, and I'm assuming our police department would have had a complaint about overnight parking. Can anybody respond to who and how that came up?
We have video cameras everywhere, including the parking lots. As far as I know, there's never been a vehicle stay overnight in the parking lot.
Are you talking about a problem with overnight?
Yes, sir.
We have it from time to time. seen people crawling out of those apartments across the street, doped up or whatever, alcoholed up, however they're doing it. And I'm very concerned about that across the street. I'm happy they're doing it, but I'm not happy thinking, where are they gonna park? Have y'all looked at that? I mean, has somebody addressed that?
Are you talking about this or those apartments or whatever?
The five across the street, they gotta look somewhere. I'm the width of Meacham across the street from those places. And that's also the place where people stop and pick up their mail, and they do all kind of other things. I don't know how that works out. Those little things were there years ago, just like the streets are 20 feet wide. Who's ever heard of a 20-foot wide street? And we've got a 20-foot wide street with a 25-mile-per-hour limit on the speed limit, which you got that same thing over there on the way to the end of Mountain Gods. On that road there is 25, and there's from here to the greens out there, open area. So all these need to be addressed. But my main concern is, and I said a while ago, this man has, my wife did call him about people parking in front. It's too easy to park in front of our place, walk across the bridge, and go in there. So as long as that's not abused, then that's fine. But how do you keep people from abusing those things? You'd have to have someone standing there all day long and say, don't do it. But
Yes, sir.
we had one time, some guy parked a cattle trailer in there on a pickup, took up the whole, we had 4 spots out there that come in our.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, sorry to interrupt. Point of order, we're past the public hearing phase.
Yes, I was, thank you. I was going to say the same thing. The issue with parking is going to be addressed as part of what we're doing here today for this business. The other businesses, I haven't seen anything regarding apartments or anything coming before us for those other places. So I do rely on Samantha to take care of the regulations, which requires parking in both residential and businesses. So back to my questions. Samantha, this is to you. The no code in place for manufacturing, that was a comment Mr. Crunk gave us, and I thought we did have manufacturing or an allowable use in commercial zones for certain manufacturing. Is that wrong?
Yes, manufacturing is addressed throughout the village code. We did this separate because it's a separate classification for cannabis that's called out from the Regulation and Licensing Division, so we had to incorporate that. The guidance that myself and my staff have been given from the state is that we should not look at this product any differently than other product.
Okay, so my last question, and I'm going to put Zach Cook on the spot. So we are tasked to uphold the code and to look at health, safety, and welfare. And is it the public in general, or is the specific people that are affected that we need to uphold the code and think about health, safety, and welfare?
That 200-foot radius or whatever it is, that's just there to say these people have a right to come and address you. Outside of that radius or circumference or whatever, those people don't have the due process right to come and talk. However, your job is to contemplate the effect of the proposed use on the general health, safety, and welfare of Ruidoso.
General.
So
Go ahead.
procedurally, I guess that's what we're talking about here. The application was filed correctly. Is that true? Because Mr. Cronk is saying that we have.
I have an email dated September the 28th from Stephanie Warren, CC Samantha Cerna, and myself. quote unquote, the Village of Ruidoso Municipal Code does not provide provision of manufacturing classes. The classification is designed by the state of New Mexico. Our code simply states that cannabis manufacturing is allowed under conditional use approval with a C2 community commercial district.
Understood. And that interpretation, the way I interpret it is our code does not say it is manufacturing for cannabis.
The municipalities
general.
don't have,
Right.
have the authority to regulate cannabis. They have an authority to regulate land use.
Right, and that's why we don't have anything in manufactured cannabis in our code, because we do not have that right to do that. So, I guess,
That sounded confusing.
yeah. Any other questions?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Point of clarification with Zach. This is all pending, and the gentleman stated that he's not going to proceed with his application with the state until we approve. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've got to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, or at least $100,000 or a little more, so sure, I'm going to make sure I'm approved before I'm going to go out and do that.
Okay. So is that a stipulation that staff would make recommendations pending approval by the state?
Yes, the state actually requires them to show that they have zoning approval from the local jurisdiction.
That is in their recommendations, their conditions, I guess. Proper permits, building permits, proper permitting.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for the applicant.
Yes, sir.
If the conditions were placed upon you that you would only be allowed to roll the joints and not be allowed to create the gummies or the other candies so that there's no, because that would be the cause of the smell, not rolling the joint. Rolling the joint doesn't really cause a smell. Would that allow you, or would you still want to continue with this conditional use to have stipulations on what you can produce?
No, I really want to do this. The rolling of the joints actually creates more of a smell than the gummy bears do.
Okay. Thank you.
Again, it cannot be smelled outside the building. Not even in the parking lot. Not even in front of the building if the door is closed.
Yeah, but I'll re-ask my question a different way. If the commission was to put a limitation on what you could manufacture, part of the conditional use, and say, we only say you could do hard candies, right? Would you still want to move forward with this? Because the way that I interpret it is a Class 2 license. There's no limitation in what you can produce. You just cannot extract the oil itself, which is a completely different process. But you can put it in salves, you can put it in candies, you can do it in whatever you want.
But when you're dealing with the oil, putting it into any product, topical soap or whatever, it does not create any fumes or any smell that can be detected outside of the building.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You bet.
Mr. Chairman.
Sir.
Mr. Duke, to try to put some of the parking to rest, would you be opposed to, since you said you had other close by properties, could you be opposed to having your employees to park somewhere else?
I'm not opposed to that at all. It's very simple. I own the Thunderbird, which is just right next door practically.
Yes, sir.
I own the Apache Village Cabins, which is right next to that. I own the Bear Mountain Lodge, which is right there on Brady Canyon in Meacham. I own the Apple Tree next to Western Auto. I've got land with several of those properties. I could certainly park.
Maybe something you could think about.
I mean, if it becomes a problem.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a problem.
And I understand that at the beginning in April, that store was busy from 9 in the morning till 9 at night.
Yes, sir.
But that has.
And if this thing kind of picked up a little bit and you had to bring another employee or two in to accommodate your manufacturing.
We had 7 people all out open
Right.
hours. Now we're 4.
And if this.
And we shortened our hours too.
Right, but if this manufacturing picks up a little bit and you have to put a couple more employees back on, maybe, I mean,
I
I'm
would
just,
have no trouble having employees.
right,
park outside.
that's what, I'm just
That is not a
trying to
problem. That is not a
ensure everyone else that's worried
Happy
about
to
it
do
too.
that. Not
Okay,
a problem.
thank you.
Point of clarification, sir. From the general public's point of view, it seems that anybody that walked onto the premise would not even realize that any of the manufacturing or pre-rolling were even taking place there.
Nobody would possibly know. No, they wouldn't know. It's a nondescript.
It's, so from the public's point of view, as far as
Doesn't
driving
change.
by and, or even coming in, that it's as, it would appear as it is operating at this moment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sam, so in your case report and just by your testimony, you say there are 6 parking places short, but you did not address that in your conditions or whatever. So what is the plan? So you're asking us to give him a variance on the number of parking spaces or to adhere to the code that we must have X amount of parking places? Am I confused?
Yes, I went out and conducted a site visit. There was no odor. They were lacking parking spaces, and I don't see any room for them to add additional spaces on site. And it's an exceptionally large building. Most of it is not used for operations. He's got a lot of it for storage, as well as the museum that takes up a lot of that square footage. So when I was out there, it was myself and 2 other vehicles. So I didn't see any of the congestion that they had described. And also, I feel that my case report is backed up by the document or lack of documentation from the police department on the parking issue.
Very good. Commissioners, any other questions? Any other comments? What is the pleasure? Yes, Vicki, I hear you.
I was wondering, you're talking about gummies and the manufacture of gummies, but there are many other edibles. Chocolates, cookies. Cookies are definitely baked. And if you're going to have a kitchen, are you going to prepare them there?
If I was to make cookies, I would do them there.
Yes. There seems to be some confusion in that a class 1 would give you the right to have pre-rolls and do your own pre-rolls. To move to a class 2 level is where you're asking to go, and that is the production and manufacture. And there's no restriction placed on that, you know, we could say today to limit that production so that it might not get out of hand, as far as I'm aware of. Is that correct, Zach?
So,
Once you give them the conditional use, why any class 2 would be allowed, is that correct?
Yes, everything that's listed within that class 2 would be allowed to be produced and packaged for sale. It would not be manageable if we sit here and say that he can only manufacture gummies and not cookies, or topicals and, you know, lotions and not gels. That's not something that the Village of Verdosa would be able to go out there and enforce. It would just be a huge undertaking of our staff to make sure that he's only producing sugar-free gummies.
I didn't quite mean it that way. However, I think it should be clear that once we give the conditional use, that gives him the wide range of production. We've talked about limited production today, but we don't know that that's really the case. Correct?
that is true, Vicki, and I think, I guess what you're asking is, because this is a conditional use, can we put conditions on it? For instance, he can't bake. So I'm assuming you're asking if, because of the cannabis laws, can we do that type of restriction?
Yes.
No, I think that anything that falls under that class 2 and class 1, he would be able to produce.
Even if we put it as a conditional use to restrict it. But we can't restrict it because
Then you
it's
police
cannabis,
it, Yeah.
right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. I'm with you. Commissioners, what's your pleasure?
Sounds like the parking's the biggest issue.
And is there, gonna add one more question?
Yes, ma'am.
Samantha, if he does not have adequate parking spaces at this time, or any, as stated in your review, I believe, area truly available to expand that parking on premises, we can't give him a conditional use if he doesn't meet the requirements. Is that correct?
That is correct. He could ask for a variance to the code. You all do have the authority to grant that. Another option that Mr. Duke would have would be to eliminate some of his other square footage to make sure that he meets the parking requirements. So maybe eliminate half of the museum or something of that nature in order to get him to the minimum parking spaces.
Question.
Or you all could just simply state that there cannot be any parking along Sleepy Hollow, just to reiterate that. But that is something that shouldn't be happening anyway, so.
And Evans.
And Evans
So-
surrounding streets.
So in your parking requirements, it says 18 plus 2. How many does he have?
He has 12 plus 2 handicap.
12.
Question. Has the requirement changed from his existing application? Does it increase because of this license request?
Yes, because he's adding on approximately, Stephanie, what is the residence in the back? Was it 1,200 square feet? Whatever the square footage is of that back home that's there, that's painted red. Are you about 1,200 square feet with it?
Yes, though the retail store and service establishments, he was required 5. The new manufacturing is requiring 9 additional spaces just for that activity.
Okay.
The museum was required 6, and he is required to have 2 of all of those spaces combined as handicap.
Did anybody know there was a museum in there?
Used to.
I didn't know that. So how well used is the museum? I guess to have 6 places reserved for the museum, I'm kind of questioning our parking requirements right now. Is it a lot of people? What is the museum?
Doesn't matter. It's an educational
Exactly.
museum on the history of cannabis from
Okay.
8,000 BC to present.
Oh, okay.
How much space does that take up?
Well, I've got it spread out, but if you want me to close it, I can just close it.
Well, I mean,
It ceased to exist tomorrow.
can it be-
Then we got too much parking.
No, you're in compliance then.
Because it sounds like parking's your biggest issue.
Okay, I'll close the museum.
So for clarification on museums, you are required to have 1 spot for each 250 square feet.
Correct, or 6 places.
Okay.
Right.
It just becomes my private office.
Yeah, the spaces were derived for how much is actually his museum square footage on the site plan.
Got it.
I mean, it's educational, but if that's what it takes to make this happen, it's done. I'm a businessman, I'm not gonna knock a building down to create more parking, unless I can buy a neighbor. I don't think any of them want to sell, so we'll close the museum, and then we have adequate parking plus some.
Right? Is that true?
Is it?
That is true. I just want to clarify, though, that is not staff's recommendation. I'm just saying that is how you could get to that number, and that's how our math was derived.
And my point is, if that's what it takes, that's what we'll do.
So you could put that in the motion.
Vicky, did you have a question?
I would believe that, yeah, and you guys just said it, that you would put that in the conditional use, that it may not be expanded to a C2 or permitted as a conditional use until that portion of the building is closed to otherwise be utilized. I mean, that space would have to be closed completely. It could not be utilized for anything. Is that correct, Samantha?
It would then follow under the storage requirements for the codes and be calculated at a much higher square footage density. With that type of use, that is one space for every 500 square feet of storage area.
Versus one per every 350 for a museum, or 250, I'm sorry.
Chairman?
Sir?
Samantha said something earlier that I'd kind of like to explore a little bit. She said that closing the museum is not staff's recommendation. So if I could just ask her why that's not staff's recommendation.
I appreciate the museum and the value that it adds to our community. I think it adds vibrancy to that area of town, as well as culture to the product of cannabis.
Question, as far as calling it a museum, I mean, it sounds to me like right out here in our foyer is a museum. It's got the history of all our, previous mayors, and
We could call
Is
it
that-
storage if y'all would like.
Or we could talk more about the option of coming back for a variance and keeping the museum open.
Well, under the circumstances, it sounds like it might warrant such.
If there's
because,
cultural value to the museum.
The museum is a little more than informational history.
And it is evolving, and I'm getting new things for it as we speak. I mean, it is something fun to see if you haven't seen it. It's interesting, even if you're against cannabis. It's still interesting.
Chairman Briley?
Yes, ma'am.
A comment in that it seems that we're talking about giving him a variance on the amount of parking he requires, and yet every letter, and there, as you know, were very many of those letters, stated that the congestion and the parking on the street was already a problem. Now we're going to give him a variance for less parking. I question the concerns of the village people.
We are the village people.
We are. I'm sorry.
You are too, Vicky.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
You guys heard a whole lot of conflicting testimony about the parking situation. Maybe a variance would be a good venue to flesh that out a little bit and see what the real parking situation is down there. Because it's basically a he said, she said on the parking.
Well, I'm willing to consent right now to have my employees start parking off premise. If that's what it takes to get this done.
And you said there's 3 employees?
Typically, there's 4.
4. So that'd be 4. Okay.
But then I'm also willing to close the museum down, and then we have adequate parking, and then no one can say anything about it. And if, I want to take the path of least resistance.
I know, I totally understand that. My only, concern or whatever, not me personally, but for you guys, you hear that he's willing to concede that to get the deal done, but you hear from your staff expert that in her opinion, in staff's opinion, there is some sort of, cultural value or whatever to the museum. So I'm just trying to protect the interest of if we can concede based on her testimony that there is cultural value, I think that you guys need to take that into consideration as well. And maybe the best way to do that is to come back with another application for a variance.
Well, that could delay the process. And
Sure.
it's going to get the neighbors more riled up, and I don't want to rile up any neighbors. So I think the simplest thing is just do away with it. Then we are automatically in compliance with our parking, and nobody can say anything about it. I don't know what those things are called that they have in New York City. That you put a car on, and you raise it up, you can park cars underneath it. Car elevators, you must know.
Something like that.
I can buy those if you want me to buy them. I don't care.
I don't take a personal position. I just think that you guys need to consider all of those factors.
Correct. So, okay, so Sam, I guess I'm kind of reversing the math. The parking requirements are 18 spots based upon what you just said. So is there duplication of area, or is this a 10,000 square foot building?
He's at 6,600 square feet, and we had broke it out based on our discussion with Brian on the use of each section of the building. It's multi-story.
The actual store footprint's very small. I don't know what the square footage is, but it's 20 by 20, 25 by 25 at the most, probably.
So in your math, 3,100 square feet is considered museum. And that's why I'm saying, is that separate and aside from the other 3,000? Therefore, 3,000 divided by 250 is...
I would have to go back and look at how our conversation went, because there was so much of it that was storage as well, like he's saying. It's not all retail.
Storage.
Mr. Chairman, could you, if you shut down the museum, could you do manufacturing in there?
Sure.
The problem may lie with the fire marshal
Okay.
and ensuring venting and all of that of the hood.
It would.
But he's got to go through the process anyway. Ladies and gentlemen, you want to take a break and take a health break and come back in 5 minutes, or do you want to make a motion and then we'll take a break?
Let's make a motion.
Make a motion.
Okay, let's go. Do I have a motion?
I motion we pass it.
Okay. Based upon the foregoing findings of fact per 54-68 and 54-100 of the Village Code, I move to grant the requested conditional use approval for case CU-2022-394 with the conditions stated in the case report. Now, I just have one question, Zach. Do I need to add anything in there as far as a variance on the parking, or just leave it as such?
If you'd like to include that.
I don't know that you guys ever made it, if there was any consensus or any resolution on the parking issue. What you could do, because number 2 is already meet the minimum requirement for parking, you could amend that in your motion to say, or obtain a variance for parking.
So I'm going to add to this.
Which would give him the option to either close the museum and automatically come into compliance, or come back and ask for a variance.
Okay, so I'm going to add to it, I'm going to say meet the minimum requirement for parking, or come back to the commission for a variance.
A parking variance.
Parking variance.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Stephanie, do you get the motion? So just to make it clear, we're granting with all these conditions, and that includes meeting the requirement for parking, or he has to come back for a variance to not meet that requirement for parking. Okay. All right. Roll call, please.
I'm sorry, the second I had by buyers?
Commissioner Byers, sorry.
Commissioner Baugh,
Aye.
Commissioner Briley,
Yes.
Commissioner Byers,
Aye.
Commissioner McElina,
Aye.
Commissioner Richardson,
Aye.
Commissioner Rigsby,
He's still there?
Commissioner Rigsby,
He sent me a message. He had to get off the meeting.
So he's absent.
He's no longer here.
what time did he leave?
Just about 5 minutes ago.
Okay, Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Motion
carries.
passes. So just depending on your parking, you either need to meet the requirements or come back for a variance.
So now I can proceed with the licensing from the state.
Or do you have to go before?
Yes, Mr. Duke, and we'll have to on a staff
I will
level.
ask for the variance of parking, and we'll schedule to come back and talk about it, but if that fails, we'll automatically close the museum and therefore be compliant. Does that work?
Yes, that'd be fine.
Okay. Very good.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Thank you for their time.
if you would, do us a favor. You've got friends that are allowing you to park in their driveway. Can you get those to move as well? I mean, I'm not saying it's illegal. I'm asking you to be a good neighbor.
No problem,
And let's get your employees parked somewhere else.
no problem. We'll
Appreciate
start
it.
that immediately.
Very good discussion. I'm going to take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back for our next case.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
I have a question for you.
I think.
Yes,
I think it's a great idea with the sugar-free. I really do. I mean, a lot of people that have cancer, they can't use it because, yeah,